Don't ask questions you don't want answered. That thought kept circling my head as I sat in the back row of the funeral home in Harrison, Indiana, staring at my father's closed casket. The room smelled faintly of lilies and old wood polish. Outside, winter pressed its gray face against the windows, flat and cold, like it had nowhere else to be. I hadn't been there when my father died. That fact sat heavier than I expected. I told myself it didn't matter. Death doesn't wait for perfect timing, but guilt doesn't care about logic, it just sits there, quiet and persistent. My sister Lydia stood near the front, accepting condolences with calm efficiency. She looked composed in a way that felt rehearsed. People kept telling her how strong she was, how proud Dad had been of her. She nodded, thanked them, touched arms at the right moments. Every so often, she glanced back at me, not with anger, with assessment. The service blurred past. Stories I'd heard before, praise that felt earned and incomplete. At the same time, my father had been a steady man. He fixed what broke, he showed up, he didn't waste words explaining himself. Which is why I wasn't prepared for what came next. After the burial, we gathered in a small side room for the reading of the will, just family, which mostly meant me and Lydia. The lawyer, Mr. Carlyle, unfolded the document slowly, like he was buying time. He read through the formalities. A few small items went to distant relatives, Dad's old watch, some donations. Then Carlyle cleared his throat. In regard to the remainder of the estate, he said, including the residence on Maple Street, financial accounts, and personal property. I leaned forward. I leave all to my daughter, Lydia Caldwell, as sole beneficiary. The words landed clean and final. For a second, I waited for more, for the part where my name appeared. It didn't. I felt heat rise in my chest, sharp and embarrassing. I looked at Lydia. She didn't look surprised. If anything, she looked satisfied. That's it? I asked. Carlyle hesitated. Your father's instructions were explicit. Did he say why? No explanation was attached. Lydia let out a small laugh. Not loud, just enough. Dad wanted things handled properly, she said. I turned to her. I was the one helping him. I was here. I paid for repairs when things broke. She tilted her head. You helped because you needed to feel useful. Dad understood responsibility. That's why he trusted me. The room went quiet. I could feel eyes on me, waiting to see how I'd react. I wanted to argue, to list everything I'd done, but I'd spent my whole life trying to explain myself to Lydia, and it had never changed anything. What do you want from me? I asked. Acceptance, she said softly. Dad made his choice. Then, lower, just for me. Maybe he finally saw you clearly. That was worse than the will. I stood up, nodded once, and said congratulations. I walked out without saying goodbye. The cold hit me hard outside. I sat in my truck for a long moment, hands on the wheel, staring at the funeral home like it had personally betrayed me. On the passenger seat was a small box Lydia had handed me as I left. Your things from Dad, Shed said. Inside were a few photos, an old pocket knife, and a single key on a plain metal ring. No note, no label. I turned the key between my fingers, trying to place it. My father wasn't sentimental. He didn't give things without purpose. I started the engine, the sound loud in the quiet lot. Lydia had the house, the money, the victory she thought mattered. But as I drove away, one thought settled in my chest, steady and unshakable. My father never did anything without a reason, and whatever that key belonged to. This story wasn't finished yet. Winning looks different from the outside. At least that's what I told myself in the weeks after the funeral, watching Lydia step into her new life like it had been waiting for her all along. The house on Maple Street didn't sit empty for long. Within days, contractors were coming and going, new locks, new paint, a dumpster in the driveway filled with the things my father had lived with for 40 years. I drove past once, told myself it was coincidence. It wasn't. The porch light was on, brighter than I remembered. Lydia's SUV sat where my father's old pickup used to be, clean and polished, like it belonged there more than he ever had. I didn't stop, I didn't wave, I just kept driving, feeling like a stranger circling a place that no longer recognized me. My own life shrank fast. Without Dad's place to anchor me, everything felt temporary. I stayed in a small rental outside town, thin walls, unreliable heat, the kind of place you don't unpack fully because you don't want to admit how long you might be there. I went back to work, kept my head down, nodded through conversations that didn't matter. People assumed I was fine. That's the thing about being quiet. You give everyone permission to believe you're handling it. Lydia, on the other hand, made sure no one wondered. She posted photos online, renovations, coffee on the back porch, honoring Dad by taking care of what he built. One caption read. The comments filled with praise. She liked every single one. Once she called me. "I'm having a small get-together," she said. "Just friends. You're welcome to stop by if you want." The offer felt ceremonial, like something she needed to say, not something she meant. "I'm busy," I replied. She paused, then laughed softly. "Of course you are." We didn't speak much after that, and honestly, I was relieved. Every interaction felt like salt in a wound that refused to close. What I couldn't stop thinking about was the key. I tried every obvious lock I could think of. My own place, my truck, nothing fit. I even stopped by an old storage unit my father once mentioned, but the manager shook his head before I finished the sentence. "Doesn't look like one of ours," he said, so I carried it with me, in my pocket, on the nightstand, turning it over between my fingers during sleepless nights. Like repetition alone might unlock its purpose. That was when Mr. Carlyle called. "I don't want to alarm you," he said carefully, "but I was reviewing some older files of your father's. There are irregularities." My grip tightened around the phone. "What kind of irregularities?" "Nothing improper," he said quickly, "just things that don't align neatly with the final will." We met in his office 2 days later, same quiet room, same careful tone. He laid out a few folders, worn at the edges. "Your father revised his estate plans several times over the years," he explained. "That's not unusual. What is unusual is how specific some of those earlier drafts were." I leaned forward. "Specific how?" "There were conditions," he said, "safeguards, decisions built around behavior, not sentiment." I thought of Lydia's smile at the funeral, the laugh, the certainty, and the final version. I asked. Carlyle hesitated. "Let's just say your sister was persuasive." Something cold settled in my stomach. "She came to you?" I asked. "Yes," he admitted, "more than once. She was very clear about what she believed your father wanted." "And what did he want?" I asked. Carlyle looked at me for a long moment. "Your father believed people reveal themselves when they think they've already won." I drove home in silence after that. The town felt smaller, the roads tighter. Like everything was narrowing towards something I couldn't yet see. That night, Lydia texted me for the first time since the funeral. "You should really let this go." It read, "Dad made his choice. Digging around just makes you look bitter." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "I'm not digging." I typed, "I'm remembering." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "You always were dramatic," she finally sent. "Just be grateful you didn't mess things up worse." I didn't respond. Instead, I placed the key on the table and sat across from it, like it was a person who might eventually speak if I gave it enough time. My sister thought she'd inherited everything that mattered. But my father had never been careless, not with tools, not with people, and not with lessons. Whatever Lydia had chosen, whatever she'd rushed into with that winner's smile, it had been her decision, and I had a growing sense that my father had been waiting to see exactly what kind of choice she'd make. Because some inheritances don't pass through paperwork, some just wait, some truths don't announce themselves, they sit quietly in a file drawer, waiting for the right hands to open it, or the wrong hands to ignore it. Mr. Carlyle didn't call again right away. That was intentional. He was the kind of man who believed timing mattered almost as much as facts. Instead, he asked me to come by the office the following week, late in the afternoon. After the phone stopped ringing and the building settled into its end-of-day quiet, he closed the door behind me and didn't offer coffee. "That's when I knew this wasn't small. I need to be very clear," he said, folding his hands on the desk. "What I'm about to show you isn't a loophole. It isn't a technicality, it's a choice your father made. One that only activates under certain conditions." He slid a thin folder across the desk. Inside were drafts of the will, not one or two, several, each dated, each revised with careful, deliberate handwriting in the margins. My father's handwriting. I recognized it instantly. The slight slant, the firm pressure, the way he crossed his T's like he meant it. In the earlier versions, Carlyle continued, the estate was to be divided evenly. But your father was cautious. He believed inheritance could reveal more about a person than poverty ever could. I swallowed. So he changed it. Yes, Carlyle said. But not in the way your sister believes. He pointed to a paragraph buried halfway through the final draft, not highlighted, not emphasized, just there. A conditional remainder, he said. Your father structured the estate so that your sister would receive full control immediately, unless she exercised that control in a specific way. My heart started to thud. What way? Liquidation, Carlyle said, sale of the house, disposal of certain personal assets, any irreversible action taken within a defined time window. I thought of the dumpster in the driveway, the contractors, the new locks. She's already started, I said quietly. Carlyle nodded. That's what concerned me. I leaned back, the chair creaking under my weight. So what happens if she does? The remainder passes, he said, to the alternate beneficiary. I didn't ask the question out loud. I didn't need to. Carlyle met my eyes. Your father believed that patience was a form of character. He wanted to see who could sit with power and who would rush to prove they deserved it. My chest felt tight, not with triumph, with something heavier. He never told me, I said. He didn't need to, Carlyle replied. You were already living the part he needed you to play. I left the office feeling like the ground had shifted, not under my feet, but under my understanding of the past. All those years of quiet support, the lack of praise, the absence of reassurance. It hadn't been indifference, it had been observation. That night, Lydia called, not texted, called. You've been talking to the lawyer, she said without preamble. I didn't deny it. He called me. Her laugh was sharper this time. Of course he did. You always did like hiding behind other people when things didn't go your way. Am not hiding, I said. Am listening. There was a pause, then. You think you're clever? No, I replied. I think Dad was. Her voice hardened. Whatever game you think you're playing, it's over. The house is mine. The accounts are mine. You lost. I pictured her standing in that house, already planning changes, already erasing him. You're sure about that? I asked. Completely, she said. And when this is done, I don't want to hear another word about it. The line went dead. 2 days later, Carlyle forwarded me a copy of a listing agreement. Lydia had put the house on the market. No hesitation, no reflection, no waiting. She hadn't even made it through the mourning period. The irony wasn't lost on me. My father had built his life slowly, brick by brick, repair by repair. And Lydia, brilliant, efficient Lydia, was dismantling it in record time. I didn't feel satisfaction watching it happen. I felt sadness, because for the first time, I understood the real inheritance my father had left behind. It wasn't money, it wasn't property, it was a test, and Lydia had mistaken speed for strength. Carlyle called again the morning the for sale sign went up. She's crossed the threshold, he said. Legally speaking, the clause is now active. What happens next? I asked. We wait, he replied. Just a little longer. I hung up and sat alone in my kitchen, the key resting on the table between my hands. I finally knew what had opened. Not a door, not a lock, a truth my sister never thought to question. And the strange thing was, I didn't feel like I was winning anything. I felt like I was about to lose the last illusion I had left about my family. Because when the papers were finally filed, when the choice my sister made came due, she wouldn't just be losing an inheritance, she'd be learning, far too late, what my father had known all along. Some mistakes don't look like mistakes when you make them. The call came on a Tuesday morning. I remember that because Tuesdays were my father's least favorite day of the week. He used to say it was the day that pretended to be harmless while quietly doing the most damage. At the time, I thought that was just one of his odd sayings. Now I'm not so sure, Mr. Carlyle's voice was calm, but there was something deliberate in it, like a man placing a final piece on a board. It's official, he said. The sale agreement has been executed. Your sister finalized it yesterday afternoon. I closed my eyes. So, I said, it's done. Yes, he replied. She's made her choice. We met that evening, same office, same chair. But the air felt different, heavier somehow. Carlyle didn't slide folders across the desk this time. He simply handed me a single document. The conditional clause has been triggered, he said. As of today, control of the remainder transfers. I looked down at the paper. My name was there, clean, unmistakable. I didn't smile. I didn't feel relief either. What I felt was something closer to grief, fresh and sharp, like I was losing my father all over again. Only this time in a way I finally understood. She doesn't know yet, Carlyle continued. Legally, were required to notify her within 48 hours. I nodded slowly. She won't take it well. No, he said, she won't. Lydia called me that night. Her voice was tight, clipped, like she was holding something back. The lawyer left me a message, she said. Care to explain? I imagine he will, I replied. In person, silence, then a short, disbelieving laugh. This is a joke, right? Some stunt you pulled because you couldn't stand losing? I didn't pull anything, I said. I didn't have to. Her breath came fast through the line. You think Dad would do this to me? You think he'd hand everything to you after everything? I think Dad planned for exactly this, I said quietly. She hung up. The next day, she showed up at Carlyle's office unannounced. I wasn't there, but Carlyle told me later how she paced the room, how she demanded explanations, how her confidence eroded sentence by sentence as the clause was read aloud, not interpreted, not argued, simply read, the part about irreversible action, the part about liquidation, the part about patience. According to Carlyle, she laughed at first, then she accused him of collusion, of manipulation, of favoritism. Finally, she cried. When she called me again, her voice was different, smaller, fractured. You knew, she said, you knew and you let me do it. I leaned against the counter in my kitchen, the phone heavy in my hand. I didn't let you do anything, Lydia. You never asked. You could have warned me, she snapped. You could have said something. I thought about all the times I'd tried to speak growing up, all the times she'd talked over me, corrected me, dismissed me. You never listened, I said. Why would you start now? She exhaled sharply. This isn't fair. No, I agreed, it isn't. For the first time since the funeral, there was no venom in her voice, just disbelief. I did everything right, she said. I was efficient, decisive. I didn't hesitate. That was the problem, I said. She didn't respond. The sale of the house fell apart once the legal hold was placed. Contractors stopped showing up. The dumpster disappeared. The porch light went dark again. The house on Maple Street sat quiet, like it was holding its breath. I walked through it alone a few days later. The rooms felt stripped but familiar. Bare patches on the walls where pictures had hung. Dust outlines where furniture used to be. In my father's workshop, the tools were still lined up exactly how I'd left them. Orderly, patient. That was when I finally used the key. It fit a small metal lockbox tucked beneath the workbench. Inside was a single envelope, my name, written in that same careful handwriting. No legal language, no explanation, just one sentence. If you're reading this, it means your sister chose speed over care. I'm sorry you had to see that. I sat on the concrete floor for a long time, the envelope open in my hands. Lydia didn't come to the house again after that. Our last conversation was brief. You think this makes you better than me? She asked. No, I said. It just means I waited, she scoffed. But there was no laughter left in it. The papers were finalized the following week, and with that, the inheritance passed. Not like a victory, not like justice, but like a quiet truth finally surfacing after being buried too long. What surprised me most wasn't that my father had planned all this. It was that, even in death, he was still teaching us the same lesson he always had. Who you are shows up most clearly when you think no one's watching, and Lydia had never once slowed down long enough to see herself clearly at all. The house didn't feel like mine when the paperwork was finished. That surprised me. I'd imagined some sense of arrival, closure, maybe even vindication. Instead, what settled over me was a quiet weight, like responsibility without celebration. The kind my father carried so naturally I never noticed it until it landed in my own hands. I didn't rush to change anything. No renovations, no new furniture. I fixed what needed fixing and left the rest alone. The house had already been through enough. Lydia and I didn't speak again for a long time, months, maybe. I stopped counting. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she was angry, then embarrassed, then determined to frame the whole thing as a betrayal, that I'd gone behind her back, that I'd manipulated the situation. I let her tell it however she needed, because the truth was quieter than any version she could invent. One afternoon, I went back to Mr. Carlyle's office to close the final file. He handed me a small packet. Notes, dated years back, not legal instructions, personal observations my father had asked him to keep, sealed unless necessary. You don't have to read these, Carlyle said, but I think your father hoped you would. I did. They weren't flattering. They weren't cruel either, just honest. Your sister is decisive, but impatient. You are patient. But doubt yourself too much. Power will amplify both traits. That was it. No judgment, no favorites, just clarity. My father hadn't chosen between us the way Lydia believed, had trusted time to do the choosing for him, and it had. I ran into Lydia once, by chance, at the grocery store near Maple Street. She looked thinner, sharper somehow, like life had sanded away some of the polish. We stood awkwardly by the dairy case, two adults pretending not to share a childhood. She broke first. "I hope you're happy," she said. I thought about the house, the silence, the responsibility, the envelope under the workbench. "I'm at peace," I said. "That's different." She studied me for a moment, like she was seeing me clearly for the first time, or maybe like she was realizing she never had. She nodded once, then she walked away. That night, I sat on the back porch of my father's house as the sun went down, the same way he used to, no drink in my hand, just air, cicadas, and time doing what it always does, moving forward, whether you're ready or not. I finally understood what the inheritance really was. Not money, not property, not even fairness. It was a mirror. My father hadn't rewarded me for being good or punished Lydia for being bold, had simply built a situation where we could no longer hide from who we were when choice entered the room. Lydia chose speed, control, certainty. I chose to wait, to doubt, to endure being underestimated. Either choice was clean. Neither was painless, but only one of them left room for truth to surface. That's the part people don't tell you about inheritance. It doesn't just pass down assets, it exposes character. It asks who you are when there's no one left to impress and nothing left to prove. I keep the house much the same now. I repair things slowly, thoughtfully, like my father did, not because I'm trying to be him, but because I finally understand him. The key sits in a drawer by the door. I don't need it anymore. It did its job. And if there's one thing this taught me, it's this: being chosen doesn't always look like being favored. Sometimes it looks like being trusted to wait. That kind of inheritance doesn't come with applause, but it lasts.